Hi everybody. So in this video I would like to go through the handbook of the original Rider Waite Tarot Pack by Rider Books, which is this one here. And so the edition that I am getting this one is from this one here. So that's 93 by Rider Books. Currently available for a reasonable price at the time of the making of this video. And I believe this is the same book as the one available with the deck and book set of the more recently available, quote unquote, the original, by, I believe it's by Rider Books as well, but on the box it has mbs.mindbodyspirit.com. This is the sort of gold, orangey, blue packaging. That is, if you Google original Rider Waite, you'll get that one. So I believe the book in that set is the same as this, but I could be wrong. Please feel free to confirm below. And also the commemorative set, I think, has a pictorial key to the tarot, which I think is also the same book as this. I had the good fortune of comparing this book with the original publication from the early 1900s that is known as Pam B. And if you, I'll put some link below, you can Google and have a look at how the original book and deck was published back then. And it truly is the first of its kind. If you think about it, this kind of modern, not modern, contemporary, independently produced tarot decks are like this now. And that is exactly, well, not exactly, but it has more in common in its appearance and its in format packaging to this one's here, these new trend and independent and indie decks with a hard box. It has a deck of cards and it has a booklet like that. And I saw one box is blue, the other box is red, I think. Again, you can check it out yourself and I'll link that website below. And of course, the books in one of those earlier original edition, I've compared it with this one here, in particular the write-up on the star number 17, and it is effectively the same book. So the write-up that I've compared is from part 2, because this is in 3 parts, and number 17, the star, not that one. So it discusses the majors, I believe, in 3 parts. In the first part, he talks about it in general, in terms of generally speaking, and then in the second part he talks about it in terms of his particular deck, this particular deck here, and then the third he talks about divinatory meanings. And so I compared this particular write-up of the star here. Feel free to freeze that if you like. And it is, I can say with great certainty that it is practically the same book as the original from the early 1900s that come in a box, a set of deck and book. Note, however, that this is a revised and updated edition. I can't speak for the other, I can't speak for the Key to the Tarot in the other editions because I don't own them, but revised and updated, forward by Liz Green. And so the revised and updated, I think, is like when I compare this section here to the antique from the early 1900s, they've eliminated little footnotes, but in essence, it is the same text. And also what I've noted is that the language here is very archaic. And so A.E. Waite is obviously, he was a highly educated man, so there is that kind of a speak, at least from what I'm getting, at least this is what I'm getting. But also the English, I feel, is quite archaic. It's the kind of English that I don't hear people use anymore. It's not the kind of, the expression in English is not the kind of expressions that you see these days, or that you hear, or that you, at least not commonly. And it reminds me of those when I'm watching period pieces in English. It reminds me of that, you know, the way they talk. It's very elegant and it's lovely, but it's also a little bit convoluted from, I think, from the perspective of our modern ears. The other thing I would like to note is that this book was written 100 years ago. It was written in English. He's an English speaking sort of, you know, man that I believe a lot of people would be able to identify with in terms of cultural heritage and identity and all that. But 100 years ago is a different world. And so if he's English or American, I can't remember which is which. He was born in one country, he grew up in another. Where is it? Does it say here? No, it doesn't. Let's say you're English or American, and you feel that you can identify with him. You know, the England and the America that he lived in is a different world and effectively a different culture. And so whatever I read here, I always make sure that I remember that he came from a different time. The other note, so there's how many notes did I do there? 1, 2, 3. Anyway, the next note I think to remember is that this is the first of its kind. Before him, before this tarot deck, there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it from what I understand. You have the Atea decks and all that, but I think they're positioned socially and commercially and practically. They're very different. I think in terms of their position in the market or in the social milieu is very different from this. This is the first of its kind. This is the precursor to our contemporary decks today in a way that tarot is very commonly discussed in public or popular consciousness now. It was how this is the first of that kind, really. And so a lot of the talks here are taken by, like the first segment, for example, it talks a lot about how the major arcana are generally throughout history prior to this, and not in a very extensive manner, but enough to give a brief understanding of where he's coming from with this one here. And it's only in the second segment that they go into description and talking about the particular cards of this deck. And it doesn't go into divinatory meaning until segment 3. And so when I read segment 2 or part 2, for example, the star here, let me read this out to you, because I'm going to do a major arcana video about the moon, the star, and the sun, and I've spoken about the moon as mediated reality, and I would like to link that with the sun and the star and how I see them in terms of reality. But so it's as good as any. Let's go with the star. The star, a great radiant star of 8 rays, is surrounded by 7 lesser stars, also 8 rays. Also of 8 rays. The female figure in the foreground is entirely naked. Her left knee is on the land and her right foot upon the water. She pours water of life from 2 great ears, irrigating sea and land. Behind her is a rising ground, and on the right a shrub of tree where a bird alights. The figure expresses eternal youth and beauty. The star is l'étoile flamboyante, which appears in Masonic symbolism. That which the figure communicates to the living scene is the substance of the heavens and the elements. It has been said truly that the mottos of this card are waters of life freely and gifts of the spirit. So that's one there. And if you go to part 1 and read the same segment about the star, listen to this. Otherwise, a dog star or Sirius, also called fantastically the star of the Magi, grouped about it are 7 smaller stars, and beneath it is a naked female figure, with her left knee upon the earth and her right foot upon the water. She is in the act of pouring fluids from 2 vessels. A bird is perched on a tree near her. For this, a butterfly on a rose has been substituted in some later cards. The star has also been called that of hope. Right, so that's just to contrast part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is like, this is generally where the star is, and this is my star, or my take on the star. And what's interesting is the sun. This is the sun, that is this one here, his son. But in the part 1, he talks about the sun in terms of the general sun depiction in the past. The sun. The sun is distinguished in older cards by chief rays that are waved and salient alternately, and by secondary salient rays. It appears to shed its influence on Earth, not only by light and heat, but, like the moon, by drops of dew. Beneath the dog star there is a wall, suggesting an enclosure, perhaps a walled garden, where there are 2 children, either naked or lightly clothed, facing a pool and gamboling, or running hand in hand. We know that from, the Visconti decks, for example. These are sometimes, or the Marseille, these are sometimes replaced by a spinner unwinding destinies. That's from the Fine della Torre there. And otherwise, by a much better symbol, a naked child mounted on a white horse and displaying a scarlet standard. That one there. And the Vieilleville Tarot have, or some write-up about the Vieilleville Tarot, which is where this is from, have mentioned that this is where the Rider Waite Smith got his sun card from. And this one here is from the Tarocchi Fine della Torre here. And so he was talking about other depiction of the sun, and of course the 2 child is like the Marseille, which I don't have here, but if you just Google Marseille tarot, you would see the sun card usually with 2 child. And he said a naked child, and an otherwise a much better symbol. And he can say it's a much better symbol for him because that's what he thinks, and that's what he picked for his own deck. And I've heard people sort of alluding to the fact that he's a little up himself, but I'm just wondering, I'm giving him benefit and doubt of the doubt, and wonder if this is just a matter of expression, a matter of language, and just our different times, different mannerism of speaking. And these days, if you see modern decks like this one here, everybody's free to choose what they feel is most appropriate to represent each of the cards the way they see fit. So I don't see why he shouldn't have either, especially when he's the first to do this, for him to say, I think this is a much better card and therefore I'm going to use this. He could have said it in a different way, but this is 100 years ago. What do we know about how people talk about things 100 years ago? So I actually think that I'm quite puzzled as to why this is not mentioned or discussed more. Like, we all want to know what the author are saying about their cards. Don't we want to know what he has to say about his cards? I mean, okay, so he didn't paint this. Pamela Coleman Smith painted the pictures and the artwork, but it's like, someone would have commissioned, you create a deck, you commission and hire an artist to make reality your vision. The creator is usually sort of not the artist, right? So in this case, when I say creator, is Waite. So today we put a lot of importance in understanding the creator's voice. Do we not think that his voice is as important? Because this is a very influential deck. I mean, so what, he's white and he's male, who lives 100 years ago. So what, he's from a privileged, quote unquote, segment of society. It's still his deck, and his voice, I feel, is as important as any voices of any creators of any deck. So I just find it quite bewildering that I don't see this more discussed or talked about. And so I'm going to go through this a little bit more, maybe come back and do a bit of a readout from segments of it, just to manage the length of this video. And so maybe a part 2 is coming, but for now, that is all. I'll talk to you later. Bye. The sun, a naked child mounted on a white horse, displays a red standard. See also page 32. It is the destiny of the supernatural East and the great and holy light which goes before the endless procession of humanity, coming out from the walled garden of the sensitive life and passing on the journey home. The card signifies, therefore, the transit from the manifest light of this world, represented by the glorious sun of this earth, of this world, represented by the glorious Son of Earth, to the light of the world to come, which goes before aspiration and is typified by the heart of a child.